This is Ron Bieberstein with Cold Fire Super Systems. Today we're going to do a reset on the CTX and CTSX piston. So we're going to start with the system, the valve in the system. We're going to take that out and tear it all apart and show you how everything is supposed to work. So the detection tube would be installed, and you have either discharged the system, or during the pressurization of the system, the piston had come up off the seat, and when you applied the nitrogen to the system, it come right out the nozzles. So first things first, what we're going to do is we're going to check the pressure gauge, make sure there's no pressure. If you need to, you could remove it from the Schrader valve, or in this case, this is the detection tube, and as you open that up a little bit, if there was any pressure in there, it would come out at that point. So we're going to start from here and take the valve out of the cylinder. You're going to unscrew that cylinder right off the bottom. That's just should be hand tight. Everything on this whole system is O-ring sealed, so you shouldn't run into any problems. Now the dip tube is on the bottom, so we're going to remove that so that we can work on this better here. In the field, when you go to do this, you really don't need to do that. I just wanted to do that so I can set that down and we can transition into the other cameras so you can see what we're doing as I do it. So from now on, we'll just work at the valve, all right? So we're going to set the valve down here. Now, the first thing we have to do is we have to take this cap. As you look here, you can see where the cap screws on right here on the body of the valve. So again, it's all O-ring, so you just should only be hand tight when you go, and it should open right up, no problem. These are a real fine thread, so it comes out of there. Now, the piston is down in the down position right now, and that's the way we ship it. And we use these shipping bolts to hold it there. But what happens is when you get that, you end up taking these out so that you can put the fittings in. Well, if you jar these around and move these around while you're doing this, what happens is the piston will come loose. It's loose inside there, so it'll move. And if it moves up off that seat, when you go to pressurize it, you put the nitrogen in and it comes right back out the fittings. So you have to take this apart and you have to reset the piston. You can't just push down on it, you have to reset it. So what you do is you open your palm and you turn the valve so that it drops right out into your palm. Now, there's the piston, and it's still got the top O-ring, but you're missing the bottom O-ring because it's still down inside there. I can reach down in there. A lot of people can't. So use something that's not sharp. Golf tee happens to work. And you can reach down in there and pull that up and out of there. And there's the bottom piston. So now what you need to do, you need to feel through there and make sure there's no cuts or gouges or scrapes of any type. It should be a nice, fairly smooth. So you do that. You do the same to the large O-ring there. You check that, run that through your fingers, make sure there's no problems there. There's another one here on the cap that we took off, the first piece that we took off. There's another O-ring right here. And then on the very bottom, there's another O-ring right here that goes from the valve to the cylinder. So check all those, make sure there's no cuts or nicks or gouges or anything on there. So once you've done that, we've got this back on here. I use, and I recommend that you use too. It's a, I'll get it around here so you can see it. It's a petroleum petroleum jelly. Now, I don't use very much of that, just a small amount. It helps lubricate, and it also helps stick a little bit so that the O-rings will stay in place when you go to do this. All right, now that's the basics of it. You've seen all the insides. Now what you do to reset the valve, you turn the valve upside down. You put the piston in one hand a little bit and put that in there, and don't push, and you take 2 fingers on each side and you just apply just a minimal amount, and when that gets lined up down there, it will slide in. Don't push it. And then it goes right in. And then you turn it over and you push down on it. If there's any sponge, that means the bottom O-ring came off during that period when we're trying to jockey it in there. So as long as it's solid, we're good to go. If there's any sponge, take the piston back out, check everything again, and then reinsert it. So once it's in there, it's in the down position. We've checked all the other O-rings, put a little Vaseline on them. We take the cap, we set it on top, and very gently, those are very fine threads, and you turn it back on. Okay, and once you've done that, now the piston can move. So if you do anything, out of the ordinary with it, you're going to have a problem again. Now, in this case, I would go ahead and put the dip tube back on, and then we set this whole thing back up and on the valve, and then you can tighten that back on there again. So that's the main thing about resetting the piston. Now, as we tighten this back on there, the way it should be, it comes down on the O-ring. Now again, no tools, just hand tight. Give it a turn on there so it's nice and snug, and that's it. Now we keep that in the upright position and no problem. When we go to turn it down, then sometimes we have a problem. So even though I don't like to, what you can do is you can remove this seal, close the maintenance valve, and pressurize it through the Schrader valve standing up. And then it's sealed at that point. Now, as long as the maintenance valve stays shut, the system is locked up. It's closed. It can't do anything. So you can do that, keep that closed, get it into the car, work it in there, put back on the detection tube, and snug that up. Don't over tighten that, because what happens is if you over tighten that right here, you'll tighten that, you'll cut that right there, because there's a brass insert in there, and those are brass ferrules. So if you tighten too tight, those two come together and just puts a small cut in there. So bring that down, screw that on finger tight, and then take it, quarter turn, half turn, past that so that it's snug. It can't leak, because if this leaks, it'll set the system off. So it's that fine point that you have to find that it's tight enough, but it's not leaking. That's the key. So now the last thing, after that's all put back in, detection tubes on, you have to reseal this valve in the open position. So once the detection tube's on, then you have to open this valve again. You have to open this valve. If you don't open the valve, the system won't work. This is a pneumatic valve, and it works because it loses pressure on the top side of the piston. So we have to open the valve, and we have to either use a fire seal and put it back into the locked open position. You can use a safety wire and wire it in the open position. It has to be held in the open position so it can never be closed by accident, because this is what makes the whole thing work. All right, so this is how you reset the piston on a CTX or a CTSX system. All right, thank you. Any questions, email us and we'll help you out.